It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. Katie Gaus with Ryan Kennedy and Michael Traikos, and we are making our way through the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, which means we've got lots of games to look at from last night and a few more to look ahead to and see where we're standing in all of these exciting series. And let's start off at the top because this one has personally, and maybe everyone would agree, been one of my favorites to watch so far. A lot of outside factors, the crowds, the fans, everything that's happening in this series between Boston and Buffalo has been a lot of fun so far. So let's kick it off there, right? Buffalo coming from behind to beat the Bruins. They take the 2-1 lead in this first round series. Let's start with talking about Buffalo. It's been obviously just the greatest story that they're there. It's been awesome to see the support, the turnout. I saw the rollerblade crew made it to Boston, and it's everything I expected from a Buffalo fan base and more. But Buffalo as a team has had one area they have not been able to quite figure things out yet. That is their power play. I saw on Twitter they haven't scored a power play goal in the entire month of April. They're 0 for 13, I want to say, in this 3-game series so far. So we love what's happening in Buffalo in terms of the support, and we love what they're doing. They're winning the series right now. But, Michael, what is going to be the concern level moving forward if they cannot figure out the power play?
Well, as long as it doesn't get into Ottawa levels of bad, Katie, I think we'll be fine. But you're right. To be a successful playoff team, you do need to have a power play that's clicking because it's hard to score in the playoffs. Like 5-on-5 goals do not come easy. So when you do get the man advantage, you really need to capitalize on it. And, I don't need to tell you, but Toronto, many years in the playoffs had just a abysmal power play, and it really did. Was the reason why they didn't advance to the second round in a lot of years or go deep. But for Buffalo, the good news is they're finding other ways to score. And, obviously the power play is going to have to click eventually. But until then, they keep passing tests. Like the win game one in Buffalo was a test, coming back in that one. And to the Dragons' den, or I guess the Bears' den, I should say, Boston, and come away with a win is no easy feat. So good on Buffalo for still taking a 2-1 lead in a series where their man advantage has been terrible.
Yeah. Ryan, what have you seen from the Sabres?
Well, I think the positive thing is the belief, right? The fact that they can make these comebacks, the fact that, most of them are new to the playoffs, but they don't seem fazed by it. And I also like that Noah Ostlund stepped up in his first playoff game and contributed for the Sabres. So you're getting that next man up mentality. You're getting people that want to contribute. And, overall with power plays, it just seems like, I haven't looked at the stats, but just anecdotally, it feels like a lot of teams are having problems with the power play in the playoffs so far. And maybe that's just because, teams have pre-scouted them well and they'll have to make adjustments. Maybe it's just because the hockey is tighter and everything counts. So your penalty kill has to be as good as possible. And, it's easier to destroy than it is to create. So penalty kills might have an advantage in the playoffs over power plays in some way.
Yes.
But it is a very interesting trend. And, if either Buffalo or Boston end up getting a really big advantage on special teams, then that could turn the series.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the Boston side of things, Ryan, they've scored first in every single game. They haven't been able to hang on to that every single game. What kind of, breakdown would you sort of give the Bruins through the first three here? Because we kind of knew what we were getting from them. We knew what to expect with Marcus Sturm and his style of hockey. So what have you seen?
Yeah, I think that, Marco Sturm, his best teams, and I always go back to, the German Olympic team that he coached. They're not big goal scoring teams, right? They're defensive, structured teams, and he's had a lot of success there.
Yeah.
I suppose the problem is when you need to get a goal or two, it might not be as easy than if you were sort of a high flying, up and down the ice team. Obviously, David Pastrnak is their most important weapon, but they had some, players that had breakthroughs or have been very good for them that don't necessarily have that same experience that Pastrnak has. So, I mean, maybe this series is just a bit of a wake-up call for a Bruins team that is in a bit of a transition with some good young players coming up. But they're going to have to kind of learn on the fly if Boston wants to extend its season.
Hey, Ryan, this is not your daddy's or your mommy's Boston Bruins. Like, no Patrice Bergeron, no Brad Marchand, and even no Bruce Cassidy. Like, 3 hallmarks of a really, defensive team, a team that can shut it down when you do have a lead. So, I guess that is the transition that we're seeing in Boston. But, you got to believe that, they're going to score more than just a goal or two a game to win the series. And it's kind of surprising, like a team with Geekie and Pastrnak hasn't been able to fill the net more, because going into the series, I think the knock against Buffalo was they play a high flying back and forth game that was going to be conducive to allowing a lot of goals as much as it was to scoring a lot of goals. And we kind of haven't really seen that yet.
Yeah. And let's not take away from the fact, too, that we have seen some great goaltending from both sides, right? Obviously, for Buffalo, we have UPL giving up that tough goal in game 2. Alex Lyon comes in for his first postseason start in game 3, does an excellent job, made some pretty crucial saves there, because there were quite a few power play opportunities for both teams in that game. Almost too many penalties at some point, but both goalies really seeming to step up. Swayman's continuing to do what he does. He looked locked in throughout almost the entire game. So good goaltending, also a factor in what's keeping these scores maybe a little bit lower. Let's transition now. Michael, I know you were in Ottawa last night. We obviously saw Carolina taking a 3-1 lead in the series after defeating them 2-1 last night. What is going on with the Senators, right? They're in a tough spot. Only 4 teams have ever battled back to win a series after losing the first 3 games. We know the stats are not good. And we were saying this before we started. I have watched Ottawa's games and just felt like if you look at the score and nothing else, you think, oh, it really could be kind of going either way. Either one of these teams could have, gotten an advantage in this series, but it's 3-0. And it feels like it should be 3-0 in some ways based on some of the things that we've seen. So what was sort of your feeling, from the game last night and just where Ottawa stands right now?
Yeah, it's not an enviable position to be in, Katie. And for Ottawa, they were in the exact same spot a year ago when they went down 0-3 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you think that they would have learned from that. And obviously they lost that series. Well. They ended up getting 2 wins, but it's an impossible or near impossible hill to climb when you're down 0-3. You asked me what I'm seeing out of the series. I'll tell you what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing any production from Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle. And for me, that's where it all begins, because in the playoffs, you need your best players to be the best players on the ice. And right now for Ottawa, we're just not seeing that. And, maybe it's, Carolina doing just a really good job of locking down on 2 of Ottawa's best offensive options. But, for me, the Senators need to get to the middle of that ice, which the Carolina Hurricanes are just not allowing to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So I was going to say, watching the game on TV, like Stützle, you can tell he's trying really hard. He's trying to make plays. Yeah. They're not giving him anything. And I don't know how much more he can really do. But, Brady Tkachuk, getting to the middle of the ice. I see this time and again, not just at the NHL level, but at the international level as well, World Juniors, whatever it is, if you can get to the middle of the ice, you're going to give yourself a good chance to win that game. And conversely, if you can shut out, your opponent in the middle of the ice, you're probably going to win the game. So I don't like Ottawa's chances because Carolina is so good and they're so structured. And
give Ottawa credit where it's due, right? This is Rod Brindamore's team, and we're seeing. They might not be winning by more than 1 goal, but they're comfortable doing that, right, Ryan?
Yeah, they're totally fine with that because I think they know that the way they play, they're not giving up a lot of grade A opportunities. And, if they need to score, they can score. But I think they're happy playing within their system, knowing that, odds are they've done their homework. They've done all the reps. Like, this is what they've been preparing for, is to play that smothering style and, having active sticks and just making it really difficult for the other team to get any sort of flow. And even with Ottawa having a ton of penalty or power plays last night, it still didn't really phase Carolina, even 5-on-3. That might have been the worst 5-on-3 I've ever seen for the Senators. At one point, I think Brady Tkachuk passed it to the linesman, and they lost the they lost the zone. But you also have to give credit to Carolina being confident in situations like that. That you got Jordan Stahl out there, you got Jacob Slavin out there. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, they're clearly operating within their comfort zone, and you can see it. There's no panic because this is what they do. This is the way they play all year. It's why they're not necessarily like always the team you want to see making it further and further, because it's not always very fun to watch. But Rod Brindamore's hockey isn't always fun. He's doing exactly what he needs to keep moving forward. But we'll see how it progresses. If they could pull off this miracle upset, I know Brady Tkachuk said that let's make a great story or something like that after the game. Well, if the story looks like it did last year, to your point, Michael, then they're just going to have to keep learning more lessons. Let's talk about another series. Yes. Exactly. What not to do in the playoffs. Here's a how-to guide. All right. Colorado and LA, another series that is a 3-0 situation. Colorado looking pretty comfortable against the LA Kings. Their superstars haven't necessarily been lighting it up, but they haven't needed to. They've just been getting it done, getting some secondary scoring. And the LA Kings find themselves now a loss away from being eliminated again in the first round. What do the Kings have to do to avoid being swept? Because it's feeling like we don't necessarily need to have the conversation about maybe whether they're going to pull off an incredible seven game win in the series. But what do they need to do to get a win against this Avalanche team?
Next question.
I honestly, I don't know. And again, this is very similar to Carolina, Ottawa, where it's like, it's Colorado, like they're the best team in the league, versus a Los Angeles team that barely got into the playoffs, that is missing one of their top offensive weapons in Kevin Fiala. All you can really hope for if you're the Kings is can you make this like a grinding competition where, maybe you win 1-0, 2-1, that sort of thing, but you can only tamp down that Avs attack so much, right? Yeah. Like somebody's going to burn you, and maybe it's MacKinnon, maybe it's Cale Makar, maybe it's Gabriel Landeskog, as we saw last night. And the Kings, unfortunately, outside of Artemi Panarin, they just don't seem to have the firepower right now to match up with the Avs. So unfortunately, we talk about the first round of the playoffs being the best. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it's a sweep. Sometimes it's just two teams that, do not line up, or, one team is just much better than the other one.
Yeah, this is why you don't want to be the final wild card seed.
It's so true.
The President's Trophy. We talk about the curse, but I'm sorry. You don't want to play Colorado in the first round. And, we talked about not wanting to be the 2-3 seed, the Minnesota, Dallas position. But again, being that final wild card team, knowing that you're going to face a Colorado team that is just, there's no weaknesses. You go up and down their lineup, and right now they're getting the goaltending from Scott Wedgwood. If they weren't getting it from Wedgwood, I'm sure Blackwood would provide similar goaltending. That's what Colorado's been doing all year. The acquisitions they made at the deadline just make them that much more deeper and stronger. They're not even getting otherworldly performances from Nathan MacKinnon. And yet they don't need it, because they are just so deep and they have so many different areas where they can beat you in. So, yeah, unfortunately for LA, it's just you're running up against a team that is just, this is why everyone picked them to be a Stanley Cup winner this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're the favorites for the reason. They're the President's Trophy winners for the reason. And LA, again, coming into this, one of the biggest things they were struggling with was producing their offense. Their head coach said after the game that we've got to find ways to score. They can give credit to Colorado, but he's also saying that we missed the net 13 times leading into the third period, right? So it's a combination of, Colorado doing what they do, but LA missing the mark when they do have opportunities. And that offense, the production not being there. It's making Colorado's goaltenders look good. It's making Scott Wedgwood look like an absolute Vezina Trophy candidate. But yes, it will certainly be interesting to see whether LA can at least find a way to dig deep, get one in this fourth game to avoid the sweep. Let's look ahead, guys. Let's look at some of the games that we've got coming up. Obviously, we've got some good ones Friday night. Michael, you're in Montreal as we speak for this game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So what is sort of the anticipation, the lead up? What have you seen in this series, and what are you expecting tonight?
Yeah, I'm expecting, like, I picked this one to be, this series to be the most exciting to watch. And so far, after two games, I feel real confident in that pick because it's been great hockey. You've got two really strong offensive teams and two teams that, let's call them a divisional rival because that's what they are. And again, that 2-3 spot, I think the West, we talked about it to death, but we didn't really give enough credit to just how tough of a matchup 2-3 is in the East. Like, these are two of the top teams in the NHL in Montreal and Tampa Bay. And now that the series shifts to Montreal, we're going to see that Habs fan really come out tonight. This is a tough building to play. John Cooper was saying yesterday to reporters that, there's something special about playing in Montreal. There's no other building that really kind of, puts the wind in the sails to the team, kind of quite like the Bell Center. So I'm expecting kind of what we saw to the first two games, which is just up and down, hopefully another overtime, although let's hope for not a double overtime because I do need my sleep. But again, just a spectacular series.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited for this one to come to Montreal because the atmosphere is going to be incredible. I think, based on how physical the first two games were, I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks, and it's going to be fun in front of that crowd because, Montreal fans lead the league in groans per minute when it comes to, anybody touching their players in their arena. So you're definitely going to hear it every time they think that there should be a penalty called on Tampa Bay. And, you got Corey Perry in there. You got pretty much everybody in this series is dialed in and everybody is stepping up for their teammates. And it's been tight. And I think, for Tampa Bay, they really need to kind of survive here. It's unfortunate that, we're probably not going to see Victor Hedman in this series. And if you're Tampa Bay, you hope that you can win this and then give him a chance to get back in there because he is such a massive piece of that lineup. But in his absence, we've seen a guy like JJ Moser continue to step up. Moser, I think he's had, easily a breakout season. I think it's fair to call it that. Where Tampa Bay has needed him so much because of injuries. And, perhaps that's kind of the silver lining of that regular season they had is now he's prepared to be a difference maker, and he has been. But I honestly, I think these next two games are going to be a coin flip in Montreal.
Yeah, it is the best place to watch a hockey game really ever, but the playoffs, oh, Michael, I am very jealous that you're in for quite a treat tonight, especially with the way this series has already gone. A lot of firepower, a lot of fiery personalities, a lot of maybe, oh man, you get a fight in the Bell Center in the playoffs, the place is going to just absolutely erupt. Can't wait to watch it. All right, let's talk about a team out west. The Edmonton Oilers and the Anaheim Ducks, the series is tied 1 apiece. We've seen some pretty average goaltending, which we kind of expected to see. That's all right. Connor McDavid hasn't necessarily emerged and taken over yet, but we've seen good performances from other guys. You got Kapanen with 2 goals. So what is sort of the feeling, Ryan, we'll start with you, of just how Edmonton has started this playoffs, and what kind of your expectation is on how the series will progress?
Yeah, I just kind of assume that Edmonton's going to find a way in this first round. Right. But I think if you look at it from a glass half full perspective, the fact that they're getting goals from guys like Kapanen is great because they're going to need that depth scoring if they want to make another long run. Right. Glass half empty is Anaheim's giving them all they can handle, and Connor McDavid hasn't scored yet. Yeah. So, do the Ducks have some kind of magic? They are coached by Joel Quenneville. They do have a ton of playoff experience. with guys like Trouba and Kreider and obviously Radko Gudas being their captain, he's got a ton of experience as well. And they've got some great young players who are big and hard to handle. And I would also say they have the advantage in net with Lucas Dostal. So I think it's important for the Oilers to take command of this series before Anaheim gets more confidence, because this is a Ducks team that I would say they're playing with house money. They're ahead of schedule. I think a lot of us thought this year would be like, hopefully they're playing important games in March and they're learning and, their young guys are getting good experience. But for them, I mean, they were competing for first place in the division up until basically the last week of the season. For them to be in this playoff position and already having won a game, I would be worried if I was Edmonton about giving the Ducks too much life. I think the Oilers need to snuff out hope sooner than later.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Ryan. Like getting that split on the road, it's always important to start a series. But for Anaheim, for all the reasons you just mentioned, to go back home, to Anaheim, with the series not at 1-1, I think they're feeling real good about themselves. And you're right. They have a lot of players who this is their first playoffs, or at least, they've never really experienced a long run. So, the more experience you can give them, the more confidence you can give them. It doesn't bode well for Edmonton. At the same time, I'd be surprised if Edmonton loses this thing.
I know, even when making the bracket, I'm sitting there and I'm just looking at this matchup and I'm like, but Edmonton's not going to lose in the first round, right? But it's almost terrible to say that was like my main logic. It was just the fact that I couldn't picture them not moving forward. But for all the reasons that you just mentioned, Ryan, it's totally plausible after this, split now on the road that this could be a shocker. We don't know. I mean, it really could be a surprise. Like you have to, what is it? When you do March Madness, you got to pick a few surprises. You got to pick a few Cinderellas. Like, I mean, Anaheim's not even really qualifying as a Cinderella the way they ended the season, but it's not crazy to think that it's very doable. And again, with Q behind the bench, I mean, take all the experience they maybe don't have on their team, pack it into him. He's got enough to go around in terms of playoffs.
He's got more experience in his mustache than these whole players.
All these guys combined. All right, let's look ahead at a Saturday game that this one pains me to talk about a little bit, but I'm going to try to get through it. The Penguins are losing 3-0 to the Philadelphia Flyers in the series. It's hard for a Pittsburgh fan to see this. Philly, just not a big fan of them. Nobody likes them.
You can barely get the words out of your mouth.
I can barely get it out. But let's talk about one thing that's really stood out to me, and that has been the Flyers' ability to shut down Sidney Crosby. And what's going on with the Penguins' inability to really generate any meaningful offense whatsoever, guys?
They're slow. They're old. And we're seeing it on display here, Katie.
Why now?
When you say why now, it's partly the opponent. Like the Flyers, I don't think enough of us were really paying attention to just how fast of a team they are. And say this for the playoffs, but if you go in hot, it is that is a great recipe, to come into the playoffs where you're just feeling great about all parts of your game. Things are clicking. You get a Porter Martone comes in. You're like, all right, we don't know anything about this kid. He's too young. Maybe we'll see him for a game or two in the regular season. He ends up being like one of their best players. Are you kidding me? So, we talked about Cinderella stories with the Anaheim Ducks. This is the true Cinderella.
That is. It's so true. I mean, there's so much good happening in Philly. What have you seen, Ryan? I know when we've talked about Porter Martone with you back to the draft days, and man, this guy, he's huge. He's the real deal. I mean, just look at him. He's got the football neck. I'm like, this guy's ready to go.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's always been that power forward. And, like his dad played hockey and was a very aggressive defenseman in the OHL. But let's keep in mind, Porter Martone obviously started his career in the OHL, but then he went to Michigan State this year. He had so much gym time, right? So you had that big frame and you had a great body to work with, but then he honed it. in that amazing gym that the Spartans have. I visited it a couple of years ago, right after they did the renovation. It's massive. So no doubt he was lifting all season long when he wasn't playing games. And that's sort of the advantage of the NCAA for a young player who's developing. And then, you look at that series, and I mean, Mike, you made some great points there. Time is undefeated. And this Penguins team is obviously older and slower. And, they've gone through that 82 game grind, and they've run up against a hot team with a lot of great young players who can really move. And, I think it's a bad matchup for them. You got that Erik Karlsson, the Chris Letang, Samuel Girard pairing that's just getting caved in defensively. It feels like some moves need to be made in terms of shifting the lineup around. But with the Flyers, if you're Philly, you want to end this series as soon as possible, right? Because you've got all the momentum right now. And I think you should go for the sweep, even if it's like a triple overtime in a scenario. Like, go for the sweep, get prepared for playing Carolina in the next round.
Yeah, absolute domination. No, all credit to Philly. And they've been it's been fun to watch them. Porter Martone's a great story. The young guys are a great story. Rick Tocchet has, seemingly really keyed into the right way to coach this group. So all credit to the Flyers, as hard as it is for me to get that one out there. All right. Well, for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix, and you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus issue to kick things off. So head over to thn.com so you can get in on the action. Let's get into the BetMGM Playbook now with Gary Pearson. Welcome to the BetMGM Playbook with Gary Pearson. And it's early days in the playoffs, but it's never too early for those sports bettors to start thinking about futures bets like the Conn Smythe. And Gary, we want to talk about who offers the best pick. Now, obviously, the guys that are at the top of this list are there because they were before the playoffs started. These are the best guys. And as long as they're in it, they're going to be at the top of this list. So talk to us about who right now are at the top of the odds lists and who's probably a good value pick at this stage of the game early in the playoffs.
Yeah, obviously, good point. So you have the conventional players at the top of the list, like you have obviously MacKinnon leads the way. Actually, most of the favorites, three of the favorites were the Hart favorites from the season. So you have MacKinnon, you have McDavid, obviously you have Kucherov, Makar's in there, again, another top dog. And then you have two of the top goaltenders. So you have Vasilevsky, and also actually Wedgwood is in it now. Again, it's really early. So we're looking at Wedgwood. We're saying, wow, look at his stats. He's playing really well, but he is playing the fourth worst offense in the league from the regular season. So how much stock you put in it? Maybe it's going to be a confidence builder for him, but you take a look at those things. So you take a look at the players. MacKinnon, again, most of the favorites are playing, or at least have started the playoffs pretty slowly. So MacKinnon has an assist, Makar has a goal, albeit a beauty. Aho's up there, but he only has one goal, and he's usually a point per game player in the playoffs. Kucherov is probably the best of the favorites, like the conventional favorites. He has 3 points in the first two games, and he scored his first goal in 17 playoff games the last game. So that's should be a good confidence booster for him.
Yeah, Michael, what are you seeing from kind of these big names as it's early in the playoffs, but certainly some of them may be a little quieter. Maybe they just haven't been relied upon or needed as much yet. What do you think?
Yeah, well, Gary, I had Nathan MacKinnon as my number one pick in our Hockey News pool.
That's right.
I'm playing the long game here. So when I think of Conn Smythe, I'm thinking, all right, who's going to be there at the end of the day? And for Colorado, I feel like MacKinnon's still a safe pick. How about Carolina's Logan Stankoven, though, Gary? Because, again, if I'm playing the long game, I think Carolina's going to be there from the East, at least in the conference final, because it's Carolina. And when you look at what Stankoven has done so far, I think 3 goals in each of his first 3 games against Ottawa, 3-0 stranglehold. Seems like a pretty safe pick. Am I right?
Well, I love the pick. I love Stankoven just because of what he represents for the team. I think like Carolina's got so much depth, right? And I was dead wrong about that prediction. Like I was expecting the Senators to put up a bit of a fight. Obviously, the games are close. the games are close, but they're looking a little shoddy. And I mean, there's no better example than the 5-on-3 power play. But let's not go into that right now. Basically, Stankoven. I think like Logan, his beep does not Stankoven. Like we're talking. We're talking.
Are you a dad, Gary?
How do you know I have a toddler? He's only 23 years old. He scored, as you say, the first goal of the first 3 games of the playoffs. He looks so good. That line, their second line, has 5 of 7 Hurricane goals so far, with Hall and Blake. So they look amazing. The chemistry's there. They're playing really well. And with the Hurricanes and having so much depth, when you get into an Eastern Conference final or potentially a final, I think 1 of 6 of their players could win it, so but I love Stankoven. Another dark horse I'm really a big fan of at this early juncture is Wyatt Johnston from Dallas.
Yeah.
I think he's another really cool, intriguing pick. He's only 22 years old, but he's already got 6 game-winning goals in the playoffs. And he's tied atop the leaderboard right now with 5 points with about 3 or 4 other players. But he's looked really good, and I like the way that Dallas is playing. And if anyone can upend Colorado, potentially it would be Dallas.
Right. Well, and you also have to think, when you're thinking of Conn Smythe, who's going to be there when it's all said and done, which certainly plays a part in this. But Michael, when you kind of consider, we'll start with you, just the list as it stands right now, some of the big names, some of the guys that you do expect to be there when it's all said and done. Who's your go-to pick if you had to choose one right now for Conn Smythe?
Yeah, for me, it's Nikita Kucherov. And, we see what he does in the regular season, but more importantly, we see what he's done in the playoffs. And each time Tampa Bay has gone deep and, gone to the dance, especially the 3 straight years where they went to the Cup final, Kucherov's name is either 1 or 2. So it's a safe pick. All Kucherov does is, put up points, and it doesn't matter if it's a regular season or the playoffs.
Okay, all right, Gary, what do we think about Kucherov? And then I want to know who's kind of your pick for it.
Yeah, I like Kucherov. I think you're right, Michael. Like in their 3 cup runs, he was scoring at a pretty prolific rate. As far as the playoffs go, like he was edged out by Hedman and Vasilevsky only because Hedman scored 10 goals that playoffs and Vasilevsky was otherworldly. So I love Kucherov for the pick in the East. I think they could have some trouble against Carolina this time around, but maybe not. But based on the first round, but again, we're really early, and Ottawa hasn't really put up their best stuff, so who knows? I still like MacKinnon because I think that actually potentially this first 3 games has been good for him because it takes the pressure off.
Sure.
And I've been seeing a lot of comments online like, oh, Colorado's not playing that well, but they don't really have to right now. They're warming up, they're playing a bit of rope-a-dope. They've got goals from, secondary scorers. They got McCarr starting to heat up a bit. MacKinnon played better in game 3. And I just like the way that they're building into things. MacKinnon, without the pressure on, I think he can still really ramp it up and ratchet it up going into the conceivably second round.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Colorado heading into the postseason, everyone was questioning the goaltending. And again, like you mentioned at the very beginning, obviously with Wedgwood being in this mix for Conn Smythe, the LA Kings aren't necessarily the greatest challenge so far, but it's still the playoffs. It's still that experience. It's still a different type of pressure that neither goaltender has experienced before. And so far, the questions are being answered in a big way by the netminders in Colorado, which makes them all the more scary as they continue to look ahead to the next rounds. We'll see if anybody can stop the Avalanche, and we'll see who ends up with the Conn Smythe when it's all said and done. Thanks so much, Gary. Now let's get into some rapid fire. Thanks so much, Gary. All right, guys, time for some rapid fire. We've got Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman reporting on Wednesday's edition of 32 Thoughts that the finalists for the Maple Leafs GM spot are Scott White, Ryan Martin, Evan Gold, and John Chaika. What do we think out of the list of candidates in terms of, who is a good fit? What do we think of this final list? Michael, what do we think?
Not a whole lot of experience in terms of being a general manager. I think John Chaika is the only one who's actually run a team on this list. Seems like, a blanket statement might be they're all kind of data-driven guys. Like we heard Mike Gillis before, as a potential candidate. I didn't like that pick. So this is sort of what Keith Pelly was outlining in terms of who they wanted. I don't know. I guess it's a good thing that you're going with maybe a little bit inexperienced, I should say. At the same time, it's Toronto, Katie, and I always kind of caution against bringing in too much of an inexperienced person, because it's not just one thing when you're the GM of the Leafs. It's everything, and it's every day. So I wonder if any of these guys are ready to handle that kind of pressure.
It almost doesn't sound like it. It's like, oh, wait, it's a pitch it that way. I'm like, are you sure you want to come here? This sounds really, it is great, but it's also scary. What do you think of this list, Ryan?
For me, the top two names are Scott White and Ryan Martin. Starting with Scott White, he's been with Dallas for a long time. He's played a lot of different roles in their front office. And if you think about the Stars, that's an excellent organization, right? I mean, they've done a lot of winning recently. They haven't won a cup with this particular group, but they've always been in the mix. So that's sort of it's an elevated level compared to Toronto. With Ryan Martin, he's been with the Rangers for years, but he's with Detroit before that. So he's won Stanley Cups, as part of an executive branch. He was an agent before that. So, that's something where we've seen a lot of success with agents turned GMs lately. And even though
Bill Zito.
Yeah, exactly. Bill Zito, Kent Hughes, we've seen a lot of guys make that transition. Jeff Jackson, who's president in Edmonton, but was also an agent. So, even though it was a long time ago, Ryan Martin does have that arrow in his quiver as well. So those are the two guys that I think they have a lot of experience and, have either won or been with an organization that has done a lot of winning. So those would be my sort of two top candidates.
I like it. Yeah, certainly bringing a winning culture in is something that could be very important and refreshing for Toronto. All right, let's talk about Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars. Obviously, they're in the lead of their series in the playoffs right now, but Jason Robertson is going to be a restricted free agent. What do we think of him? Because he's right now on a 4-year, $7.75 million per year deal, and he seems poised to get a pretty big one moving forward. So what's the over under? We've got 12 million for his next contract. Where do we see him landing? And is he staying with Dallas?
That's the big question, because if he's on the open market, it would be an offer sheet or like a trade at this point because he's an RFA. I would definitely say 12 million. But if he sticks in Dallas, maybe it's a little less if it's on a long-term deal. Having said that, he's got 5 points already in the playoffs. That to me is the big X factors. We've had playoffs where Jason Robertson has not produced. And if he's not producing, then what is he doing? But the fact that he's hot right now, I think his agents are probably like, keep going, man.
Go, buddy, go. Keep going. Yeah. What do you think, Michael?
Honestly, great job by Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars for keeping a player who's, he's 26 years old. I'm trying to bring up how many years he's been in the league now. 7 years he's been in the league. A great producer, and he's still under control. They have all the leverage. And Ryan, you're right. If a team wants to offer sheet him, sure. I guess you're going to have to pay top dollar, but I still feel like Dallas can get this guy signed long-term if they want for a reasonable price, or at least maybe a shorter-term deal where it gives Robertson more control. But if that's the case, Dallas is going to get him at a lower contract. So I'm going to take the under 12 million, Katie. And again, just great asset management by the Stars, because you've got this guy who's just, let's call him a superstar, and he's still under control that many years in the league.
Yeah, plus he's still fired up after not making the Olympic team, so he's really playing with some extra juice under him between that and the contract. All right, 2 more quick ones to wrap things up, but we've got comments from Steve Yzerman, the GM of the Red Wings, at the end of the season press conference, saying, "We need better players," which is interesting because he's the GM, so that's his job. What do we think about this comment, and how many better players do they need? Like, what's going to fix Detroit now?
They had a chance to get better players, Katie. It was called the trade deadline. And Detroit, you didn't get better players at the deadline. You just kind of did not much. And like they could have had a Vincent Trocheck here. He would have been a better player. He probably could have got them into a playoff spot. They could have went hard on, Robert Thomas. So I don't know if it's Steve Yzerman saying, I had a chance to get better players and I didn't do it. Now we need to go get it. But, it just feels like you've been at the helm for how many years and you haven't gotten the players that are going to take you there. Who exactly are you blaming?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. They need 3 better players. They need another center, as Mike mentioned, like a Trocheck. And they need 2 more defensemen that can play in their top 4 and push down some of their weaker players into smaller roles. They need more support for Seider and Edmondson, who are obviously their best 2 blue liners.
All right. I like it. Solved it. Perfect. Final question for us. Both Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon have embellishment calls against them in these playoffs, which is great because they're besties. So, of course, they did it together. But whose embellishment was worse?
I'm going to go with Sid. And I'm only going to say Sid because, he did get a stick in the face, but you don't need to drop down to the ice. And I just love that reaction from the Philadelphia Flyers fan who was just kind of giving the side look like watching
it. Watching it was a great interaction. And Crosby receiving it and just it was great.
It was just such a great meme.
It was a perfect moment. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I definitely think Crosby's was worse because it did look like he got shot from the grassy knoll there. MacKinnon, he got hit by Hellenius, who's a massive human being. So it's like I can understand getting shoved from behind by Hellenius. Even MacKinnon, if he's not balanced, he's gonna fall. But with Crosby, it's just like, ooh, that was pretty flagrant.
Yes. To be fair, first ever embellishment call against Sidney Crosby, which is you saw the Philly fans immediately calling him a baby. And I think the guy that, hit him called him a baby. Was it? You're certainly not the best look. I did appreciate the explanation we got from Henrik Lundqvist on the panel saying, when a stick comes near your eyes and your face, there is an inherent uncontrollable reaction.
Yeah.
But yes, when you fall that way, and then of course with the game where it was and the series where it was, did it add to a feeling of maybe some desperation? Probably. So it definitely wasn't the best look. We'd love to see Crosby prove them all wrong and come back and then get into the mix. But good stuff. Yeah, embellishment calls are always an interesting one. So we got some good actors in the league. Guys, great stuff today. Obviously, lots of hockey still to look forward to. Lots of games coming up tonight and all weekend long as we continue to make our way through the first round. Michael, enjoy the Bell Center tonight and that amazing atmosphere. That does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. I'm Katie Gaus with Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. We'll see you all next week.